Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Garrett Smith, the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. And we are here with another episode of You Love Your Liver live stream. I see the camera in the background. I go, oh, I still didn't fix the light in my little salt lamp. Oh, well, I can manage without the negative ions floating around. Oh, no, what am I going to do? I like when they said, I was trying to figure out one of the claims that people made about the salt lamps was that they kick off negative ions, which I thought was plausible enough. But then they said that the negative ions that were kicked out would protect you from EMF. And I was like, okay. Still waited to see any references on that. If anybody has any references on that, please share them. So anyway, so it is January 20th, 2023. We are into the new year. And one of the topics that I wanted to go over today, if you didn't get to see last week's episode on the testimonials, those were all quite amazing and evidence of proof of concept and what we're doing works. So you may want to watch that one. For those of you who want a background, if we start talking about toxic bile today, which we always will, go back and watch episode 71. That's the one that people have said is my best summary of toxic bile theory. And the very first live stream, I also went over it too. But 71 live streams later, we've kind of streamlined it. So the topic for today, nitric oxide. People in the health world love to talk about stimulating nitric oxide to dilute the blood vessels and do all sorts of supposedly wonderful things. One of the things that I talk about a lot here is what I call the duration paradox effect, which is something that often looks very good short term, destroys that very thing long term. Things that look good in cell studies, which is what a lot of supplement companies look at and a lot of medication things look at, they absolutely destroy the very thing that they supposedly fix because they're not essential nutrients. If it's not an essential nutrient and it's making your body do something, either your body could not do that thing already, or it didn't want to for some reason to protect you. Nitric oxide may fall into this. Okay, let me give you an example that fits into today's topic very well. In the erectile dysfunction world, which Accutane and retinoic acids are well known to cause, active vitamin A. I want to clarify something. Accutane, Isotretinoin, Accutane is 13-cis retinoic acid. Okay. Part of every bit of vitamin A that you eat turns into 13-cis retinoic acid. So when you eat vitamin A, your body makes some of it into into 13-cis retinoic acid. Let me find this paper real quick, just for the doubters. If you go and you look at the vitamin A metabolism charts, you'll see that 13-cis retinoic acid is a normal, natural byproduct, detox product of vitamin A. Busy. Okay, I'm busy. We're on a live stream. I'll be right back. I'll be back. Okay, sorry about that. Life happens in the midst of everything, right? So, paper 13-cis-retinoic acid is an endogenous compound in human serum. Accutane is an endogenous compound. That means it's made from within your body. In human blood is what they're saying. So when you eat vitamin A, you turn it into Accutane in your system. Pretty good idea to avoid Accutane. You know, Accutane's used as chemotherapy. They've studied it as a vaccine adjuvant. You know, things that generally this crowd isn't really interested in. So you also turn it into retinoin, all trans retinoic acid. And you also turn it into alitretinoin, which is 9-cis-retinoic acid, which is mainly used as chemotherapy. That's what vitamin A turns into in your system. So then people start wondering, why is vitamin A bad? And I go, well, it turns into these compounds. And for those of you who go, well, I mean, are people actually seriously going to argue that natural Accutane is somehow not a problem, whereas only synthetic is? Always remember they use the same science to identify natural retinoic acids versus synthetic ones. It's the same science. So how could they be different functions when they use the same chemistry to identify them, right? So what happens with Viagra and the other erectile dysfunction drugs? So those are said to stimulate nitric oxide, right? That's how they work. Well, let me tell you about, in the real world, what doctors who work in these like erectile dysfunction, they give out the ED drugs like candy, what they see with chronic nitric oxide stimulation from Viagra and Cialis and that kind of stuff. I have a buddy who worked in one of these clinics, and he told me exactly how it works. So they get a lot of like these 20-something guys who, to impress the ladies, they don't need ED drugs, but they want them so they can seem like supermen. Okay. So they're going in and lying a little bit. I have problems. I need this medication. And so the doctors give it to them because doctors these days are often not much more than drug pushers. So what happens to young men who take these too often? This is a warning to you guys who you may have some ED from being toxic, from being zinc deficient, selenium deficient, vitamin A toxic, copper toxic, Accutane damaged, which is vitamin A toxic. Don't ever let anybody tell you that taking Accutane gave you a vitamin A deficiency. That is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. You want to know that sounds ludicrous? I posted on Twitter about this week. Imagine if somebody said, you drank so much alcohol that you got alcohol poisoning, alcohol toxicity. That damaged your liver, and now you have alcohol deficiency. You would look at them and be like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So what is the Accutane crowd, the Accutane damaged crowd, and the misinformed, like an MD on Twitter who tried to teach me about how everything's vitamin A deficiency and there is no such thing as vitamin A toxicity? I was just, what's the word? Gobsmacked, I believe is the fancy word for that. They say, okay, so you took Accutane. This is what they're saying. And it damaged your liver. And now you have vitamin A deficiency because your serum retinol is low or lower than we think it should be. You poison yourself with active vitamin A, and now you have a vitamin A deficiency. That makes sense. Now, did you know that vitamin A is an alcohol? So therefore, we go back to that. You poisoned yourself with alcohol, and now you have an alcohol deficiency. Do you see how ludicrous this is? Do you see how they are trying to make the science make you think that you need vitamin A regardless of what you have? Unreal. So what happens with these erection drugs, these erectile dysfunction drugs? 20-something guys, especially, or any age, they start taking it, and let's say they have a very active sex life, and they're taking it quite regularly. And they take it over and over and over. And what they start noticing is that it doesn't work as well. And eventually, they have to take it to even get an erection at all. And then it stops working. And then they have to move up to the next strongest drug. And repeat the same process. It starts working less. Eventually, they have to take it or they don't get any effect. And then it stops working. And then he told me at some point, these young men have to move on to injecting their own penis with the same types of drugs, but stronger concentrations. So they have to inject themselves. Repeat the same process. Eventually, it stops working as well. Then it stops working completely. And then they have to move on to like things like implants. This is the very definition of a drug, which is tolerance, where you develop a tolerance. So it takes more and more and more to get the same effect, and withdrawal, where if you don't take it, you have severe, significant negative side effects. Obviously, those drugs are damaging something. But what I just saw the other day was that they were saying, ooh, Viagra might reduce your risk of heart attack, because they were going through the research and they said, oh, well, these people who took Viagra regularly had less incidences of heart attacks or whatever. Here's what I want to tell you about any of those studies where they say this reduced your risk of this. They don't tell you about the other diseases that increased, okay? The key thing to understand about health is that you can shift a disease state. You could do something that makes it so you have less risk of this disease, but you're shifting your toxicity and your disease risk over here to cancer or whatever. Just because it reduces one disease risk doesn't mean like when they say 12 cups of coffee a day reduces your risk of Alzheimer's. First of all, who the heck drinks 12 cups of coffee a day? And I'm going to guess that those of you out there who look at the people who drink 12 cups of coffee a day, you can just look at them and know they're not healthy. It's obvious. And then what happens if they don't drink 12 cups of coffee a day? They don't even get out of bed, right? So it's a very key concept to understand that one disease state. So let's say all these people taking all this Viagra, well, they run out of the ability to get an erection, and they're creating other diseases in their liver, which is what we're about to go over, which then can show up anywhere else in the body. Oh, but if you stimulate nitric oxide, they may have less of a risk of heart disease. You know, the old robbing Peter to pay Paul, making a deal with the devil. So let's get into that paper now. So what is the paper? Effect of chronic nitric oxide activation or inhibition on early hepatic fibrosis, that's scarring or cirrhosis, in rats with bile duct ligation. That means they gave these rats cholestasis. They tied off their bile ducts, gave them mechanical cholestasis. And they wanted to see, what does stimulating nitric oxide in this situation do? And they looked at the bile ducts themselves. Okay. So I want you to understand the difference about what we're going to say here. In rats, let me back up. Arginine, L-arginine, is an amino acid that is often given to, or that men take often to improve blood flow, whether it's for working out so they can get a better pump, right? Or so they can get a better pump down there by increasing the blood flow, by increasing nitric oxide production, which then dilates blood vessels, which improves blood flow, which is how the male equipment works, right? Okay. In rats treated with L-arginine, the area of fibrosis, aka scarring, was almost 3 times larger than that found in bile duct ligated rats, the rats they gave cholestasis, and in L-name, which is nitro L-arginine methyl ester, treated bile duct ligated rats. Although the observed biochemical changes were similar to those seen in rats treated with L-NAME, which is the nitro where was it again? Nitro L-arginine methyl ester. Okay. So the rats they didn't give cholestasis to mechanically had 3 times the amount of fibrosis, scarring, cirrhosis than that found in the rats they actually tied off their bile ducts and gave them cholestasis. So let's go to the very last couple sentences. These results suggest that nitric oxide production may be a key factor in the development of fibrosis in bile duct ligated rats. They also support the hypothesis of a dual role for nitric oxide, one beneficial mediated by its circulatory effects, and the second negative through its local toxic effects. Maybe y'all have heard about, with herpes viruses and shingles and all that stuff where you avoid arginine during that time. You increase lysine. People find that it helps a lot. Decreasing arginine. Why would that help? So let me give you a quick personal story. And the reason why I looked into arginine and liver problems was because I went and I got some arginine and citrulline. So arginine is the amino acid we just talked about. And citrulline is an amino acid that I think it increases nitric oxide about 3 times as much per milligram as arginine, if I remember correctly. It's a really, really more effective arginine. Okay. So I got some powder of it. And I took a teaspoon, which is the suggested dose on the bottle. And what we're finding on the Love Your Liver program, many of you may be able to back me up on this in the chat or the comments, is that as we are starting to get people better and their symptoms and their problems are going away or going down, and they try these old things that used to help or that are supposed to help, but as we're learning, they help through harming. We find that we're more sensitive to the negative effects. This is happening to a bunch of people. It's that we're cleaner and you're more in tune with what makes you feel better or makes you feel worse. Some people might be like, well, you're getting weaker. No, it's that all these people out there today who are like insensitive to their own body's feedback are just damaging the heck out of themselves and they never feel it. That's why. Being able to feel what is not good for you is kind of critical for a long life. This is good for me. This is not. Anybody who's in relationship areas would say it's really good for you to know what is good for you and what is not, and to become sensitive to that. So why would we not think the same thing in health? So I took 1 teaspoon of this powder. Now I'm normally very good with bowel movements, 2 a day, 3 a day. I didn't poop for 2 days. So now you're going to get a little education in toxic bile theory. What happened? Well, what helps trigger us to poop? What is one of the main triggers that gets you pooping or not? It is bile in your guts, in your intestines. It is the amount of bile touching your intestines that triggers you to poop. I've been over this research before. Constipated people, so they did a study and they looked at people with irritable bowel and constipation. They looked at irritable bowel and diarrhea, and they looked at controls, normal people. So these are the rough numbers that the study came up with, and I don't remember the units, but they basically looked at the poop. And they said in constipated people, there was about 200 units of bile. In diarrhea folks, there was about 1,200 units of bile. And in normal people, there was about 500. So if I was normal before, pretty good for what most people see today, and all of a sudden I was constipated What does that mean about the bile that was in my gut? It went down. Where did it go? Well, as you just saw in that paper, the arginine damages the liver itself, and it caused more damage than when they actually mechanically tied off the bile ducts. What happens when you mechanically tie off the bile ducts? The bile backflows, it backwashes into the bloodstream. What do you think happened to me? Why was my bile not in my intestines? Because it went backwards into my blood. And I did not feel very good for those 2 days. That's where I immediately started going, something is very wrong. Something with the arginine and the citrulline is very, very wrong. This didn't used to happen to me back when I was really vitamin A toxic and copper toxic and all the stuff that I've avoided for the last 4 years. And then it all went away and it was fine. So I'm back to fine like I was before. But that was drastic. It was like when I used to think I was smart and I took 50,000 units of vitamin D a day. I'm sorry, once a week. I took 50,000 units of vitamin D once a week because I thought it's fat soluble. I'll take it all on one day. Like then I don't have to remember every day. So I had 25,000 unit pills from Thorne, which I believe they stopped selling. Gosh, I wonder why they would why would they stop selling the mega big doses? Couldn't be potential legality of toxicity coming up in the future, could it? I don't know. So I took 2 of those on a Sunday. And it took me a couple of weeks to figure this out because every time I do that, I wouldn't poop for 2 days. What happened? Well, I've shown the research here before that vitamin D by mouth, vitamin D supplements, reduces your bile production. So does vitamin A. One of the biggest problems we see in Love Your Liver people who come in is constipation. Shocking that these all go together. And they have symptoms, which means they have more bile in their blood than they should. So they're not pooping and they have systemic symptoms. This is toxic bile theory. They are refluxing toxic bile into their blood. Okay? So anything you all are out there doing trying to stimulate nitric oxide, as I listed on this, L-arginine, citrulline, beets, Viagra, Cialis, whatever, you're damaging your liver. I remember very early on, Grant Genereux, the man who introduced me to vitamin A toxicity, and I were talking, and he said, I went and I looked up the side effects of Viagra, and they look exactly like vitamin A toxicity. He did that with statins too. And back then I was like, okay, because I want you guys to, it's okay for you to be going, well, wait, Viagra's not vitamin A. Statins aren't vitamin A. Why would it cause the same side effects? How is that vitamin A toxicity? And that's exactly what I thought. I didn't doubt him or that this was happening. I was just like, how is that vitamin A? That doesn't make sense. Fast forward to today where we have toxic bile theory. It's liver injury. It is cholestasis. It is toxic bile refluxing back into the blood, which then causes the same profile of symptoms. Okay? So I went and I looked up like Viagra and liver injury. So Viagra is sildenafil. We got just some study titles here. Sildenafil-associated hepatotoxicity, that's liver toxicity. A review of the literature. They're reviewing, and then they'll say, so then you'll see some things where they're saying protective effect of sildenafil on the liver. You have to understand the duration paradox. So they'll go and look at cells, and they'll look at, I think one of the studies I looked at, they were looking at that rats or mice for 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. Short-term studies in animals or cell studies Here's a good general rule to go by. If they look good, like they make it better, that's a very bad sign that they're going to make it worse. Let me give you another example that I'm going to go over. I'm going to make a giant Twitter thread fairly soon about capsaicin and spicy peppers, capsicum, that stuff. So there was a study on pain and how capsaicin affected pain. This was like the most perfect example of the duration paradox that I could come up with out of the literature of a known toxin. If you think capsaicin is good for you, I'm sorry. It's chemical warfare made by plants. I mean, seriously, it burns your butt, it burns your eyes, it burns your mouth. It actually sends it's been shown in the research that when you eat spicy food, you poop, like the food moves through you quicker. Why would your body do that? Because it doesn't like it. Actually, I found a study in South Korea. It is well known that babies developing painful rashes is because the mother ate spicy food. The mother passed on the capsaicin to the baby, and the baby had a skin reaction to it. Does this sound like something that's good for you? Why do cops use pepper spray? It's not because it's anti-inflammatory. Give me a break. So, they had a study on capsaicin, and it was a pain threshold study. What they found was during pain, like when they were inducing pain on people and they gave them some capsaicin, they were able to tolerate a little more pain. Short term, during. But then they looked at people who consumed spicy foods 3 days a week or more, and they found that their pain threshold was lower. Do you see what I'm saying? You ever have it where you have like a favorite food and you start eating it too much and then eventually you can't stand the thought of it? It's a similar thing, right? Too much of a good thing, but really we're talking about toxic stuff. This is the duration paradox. There are far too many people who completely discount the duration paradox and are going to pay the price. So a lot of you out there, as I sort of joke about, but I'm very serious about when I say this is not a game, people think they're going to discover the next new thing, and they go in the research and they're like, oh my gosh, I found this study on bile duct ligation, and then they look at like Viagra or Cialis and they go, wait, this short-term study showed that it helped, so I'm going to start taking boner drugs. And then they wonder why they ruin their liver and they get new health issues. We've been through, in the 4 years, many of us have experimented with a lot of these things and found the duration paradox to be a very true and useful concept. Things that often look good in the research short term, or in cell studies, or in animal studies, or in very short-term studies like boron. Oh, let's go over boron real quick. So the famous study on boron where guys boosted their testosterone. It was a study done in Iran, and I don't remember the exact numbers. Here, let me look it up. I'm not trying to push boron. Boron is toxic. Don't use it. Not an essential nutrient. Where was it? I'm not worried about it. It was like 10-day study. It was like a 10-day study, or maybe 12 days. And they gave these guys 10 milligrams of boron or something a day, some huge dose. And they saw free testosterone or something go up like 40% or whatever. So everybody's like, take a ton of boron to stimulate your testosterone. Do you know that high dose boron in mice and rat studies leads to infertility? Would this be the duration paradox? It looks good short term and destroys the very things that it seemed to help long term? Gosh, how could we get men to take a poison that makes them infertile? Tell them it boosts testosterone. Only do a 10-day study. Show it while it looks good. Don't show it long enough that it looks bad. This is how we have all been duped. We have all been duped through research that looks short-term. And I'm just going to tell you, cell studies are generally, if we got rid of all the cell studies and only looked at long-term human studies, or at least longer term, there wouldn't be so much confusion. Cell studies and membrane receptor studies and all this, they're garbage. They're basically useless. So if anybody's trying to sell you stuff using cell studies and short-term studies on rats and mice, just ignore it. So that's all I have on that. Don't go trying to stimulate nitric oxide. If you do, you may get a honeymoon phase, you feel better, and it will go bad. That is the duration paradox. Another thing about the duration paradox is things that tend to store more toxins in your liver, like phosphatidylcholine, lecithin, which is part of the LRAD enzyme, which is lecithin retinol acyl transferase. That is how your liver stores vitamin A in itself. Your liver stores fat-soluble toxins as esters, and it requires an enzyme to do that. The enzymes to do that typically require phosphatidylcholine, aka lecithin. If you take more poisons out of your blood and store them in your liver, you jam them in your liver, then we can see symptoms go down while your liver is slowly getting fatty and getting full of toxins until the dam breaks. So you feel better until everything explodes and it can't hold anymore. And then you wonder why the things that used to give you so much relief now don't give you any relief. Gosh, does this sound like the Viagra thing we talked about earlier? I don't know why no one else figured this out before me, but I'm here to do it. God put me here to do it. So let's get into the questions now. For those of you, so we have the live chat going. I'm going to start on the live chat. I did see that there was at least one super chat. Okay. There are two super chats. I want you guys to hear me here. There are two super chats that I did not get to. I did not have last night, I did not remember to find them. And I was in Phoenix with my son at our first NBA game ever. My buddy took us and it was great, but I was driving back at midnight last night and I didn't remember to find those two super chats. So I know there's two super chats out there that I have to answer. And I'm not going to be able to find them right now. So unless I know one of the names, if you guys know who it is, or you know the question, or you are the person who posted that super chat, I'll try to find it. I'm going to get to those two super chats. I want to thank you guys for doing it. I'm very sorry for missing it. I'll try to contact you if I can. And otherwise, I did see the one super chat, so I'm going to get to that first. Now, for those of you who are listening, feel free to comment in the chat. I don't get to that many questions because I thoroughly answer them. And if you want a question to go to the top of the queue, you can do super chats, and that's where you contribute a small chunk of change, and your question goes to the top of the list. Now, the other thing is if you want to help this channel grow, make sure to subscribe. That's how you get to talk in the live chat. And make sure to, if you want to click out of the chat, if you're in the live chat, go click out of the chat, like the video. That helps a lot. And then if you're here later, make sure to like the video. And also leaving comments really helps the computers to realize that people like this and that should spread it more. Funny thing this week, though, my videos started getting censored and taken down on Vimeo. My private videos for the Inner Circle started getting taken down by Vimeo. I pay them to host, and they are actively censoring me now. So we're going to be finding a new place to store the videos. So for those of you who may be working with Vimeo or have considered working with Vimeo, you have now heard my experience. I will be moving out of there as soon as I am able. Disgusting. So let me find that. Wow, sometimes the scrolling just jumps. Okay. Amma says, hi, doc. Synthetic vitamin A equals natural. That is clear. Please explain the difference between supplemental vitamin D versus natural vitamin D, i.e. sun, and is there another source? Thanks. Hope that makes sense. Okay. The key thing about, well, let me start with this. Vitamin A, retinol. Vitamin E, tocopherol. Vitamin D, cholecalciferol, calcitriol. They all end in OL. They are all alcohols. What I'm going to throw out here today, I'm not going to get deep into this because I haven't figured it all out. Vitamin D is an alcohol and turns into an aldehyde eventually and an acid. Maybe there's something wrong with the science of vitamin D somewhere. There's so the guy I'm going to throw this out there, Jim Stevenson on Facebook. Jim Stevenson Jr. Stephenson. Jim Stevenson Jr. Now, he is very much an expert on vitamin D metabolism. So if you want to learn more about vitamin D metabolism, you can follow him on Facebook. He posts a lot of stuff. The thing that's sad is he has fallen into a bad crowd, and he now believes in things like bioavailable copper and the need for vitamin A. And it's regrettable. It's regrettable. But he goes into how sunlight vitamin D is not the same as vitamin D pills. The key thing to remember about sunlight vitamin D, in theory, we're making all the assumptions of vitamin D is good right now. First of all, Jim and I will say that when people measure calcitriol, also known, so the normal vitamin D that people measure in tests is 25 hydroxy cholecalciferol. Okay? That is considered a storage form of vitamin D. The active form of vitamin D is calcitriol. 1,25 dihydroxy cholecalciferol. Do doctors measure this much? What is the only one, if the vitamin D science is all real, which I have my doubts, it was started by the Rockefellers also, just like the vitamin A science and calcium. Calcium and vitamin A and vitamin D science was started by the Rockefellers to help the dairy industry to sell people on the supposed health benefits that you could only get from milk. That's interesting. That they all came from the same place. And they all calcify the body. And I'm going to tell you that most disease, chronic disease in humans, one of the end results of it is calcification. Copper toxicity calcifies people. Vitamin A toxicity calcifies people. Too much vitamin D calcifies people. And you throw too much calcium in the diet on top of that, and it's just gasoline on the fire. That's the raw materials, right? You got to have the calcium around to calcify. What provides all of those in spades? Dairy. What did they do the health fad selling us on health benefits of 20 years ago? Soy. What did they do the health fad more recently on? Coconut. There's a pattern here. Maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was selling us on fluoride and how you need it for your teeth. There's definite patterns. But supplemental vitamin D, here's the easiest way to think of it. Your body has no control over it. So your body, as soon as you throw it in there, your body is scrambling to figure out what to do with it because it did not make it. If you are making, so what I want to go over one thing I'm not debating here. Humans need sunlight or ultraviolet B light to be healthy. This is not up for debate. So when they say, oh, people who have lower vitamin D and they live in places that aren't sunny versus people who live in places that are sunny and are healthier, the difference to me is the sun. That's what I'm going by. That's what I'm reducing it down to, is the sun is the difference, or the UVB that they might get from sun lamps or tanning beds or something like that. Remember, most of the research that people think is saying sunlight is good for you was done with ultraviolet lights because the sunlight is too much of a variable. So they do it with UV lamps. The thing about it is your body can modulate its production of vitamin D from light, and it can make different forms of vitamin D. I think Jim Stevenson was showing that there's like 23 or 25 different forms of vitamin D in the body. 23 or 25 different forms of vitamin D in the body. That's starting to sound like, well, there's multiple carotenoids, and there's retinol, and there's retinol esters, and there's 13-cis-retinoic acid, and all-trans retinoic acid, and 9-cis-retinoic acid, and 4-oxo-hydroxyretinoic acids, and 4-oxo-retinoic acids. And it's weird. There's so many different forms, and they're so similar. Huh. So I'm torn right now. I'm not willing to go all in on one side yet. So I'm still arguing the normal side of vitamin D. But we want the body to have control over it. We want the body to have control over the vitamin D production and where it's sending it. And in theory, when you do that with sun, then you don't have problems. When you take in supplements, your body loses control. Your body does not have control over how much you take, and you're taking in a specific type. That is the difference. Okay? But yeah, so let me give you guys the quick rundown of how do we fix vitamin D in the Love Your Liver program. We reduce or minimize vitamin A. And we do other things in the Love Your Liver program. So normally number 1 is you do the Love Your Liver program. Number 2, do not take vitamin D supplements. Number 3, get sunlight or UVB light, which can be from artificial sources, regularly on bare skin. Number 4, it has been shown over and over in research that fixing your magnesium status raises vitamin D levels. Why aren't doctors giving magnesium first? The research says over and over that if you fix your magnesium levels, your vitamin D levels go right up with it. And then number 5, which is very, very helpful with testing, is to fix your zinc levels. I test both blood and hair to fix zinc. I don't just joke around with just hair or just blood, because you can see things on one or the other sometimes. One of them will look normal and the other one is obviously low, and vice versa. So for people who rely only on one, they miss things. And then what I also do is if people need vitamin K, we work on it. Not everybody needs vitamin K. Some people do. Some people don't. By doing that, a client I just talked to, she was like, my doctor thinks my vitamin D is too low. And she's been doing the program and she's like, well, now it's winter here and my vitamin D is now higher than it was in the summer doing what we do. So it wasn't sun that raised it. Gosh, what are the other things we talked about? Avoiding vitamin A, minimizing it, because vitamin A is considered an antagonist to vitamin D. What I've shown is that there's a vitamin A toxicity epidemic going on. And then if you listen to the vitamin D people, they say there's a vitamin D deficiency epidemic going on. Wait, they're antagonists to each other. Are you following? There's too much vitamin A, it lowers vitamin D, and there's a vitamin D deficiency epidemic going on. So is there really a vitamin D deficiency epidemic going on, or is it just the vitamin A toxicity epidemic? And the magnesium deficiency epidemic. Oh, I've shown research that vitamin A depletes magnesium. Interesting. Maybe these things are all connected. So I also don't care if a 25 hydroxycholecalciferol, the normal storage vitamin D is I want it 20 or above. 20 or above on your 25 hydroxycholecalciferol. The normal vitamin D they measure is fine, because here's what Jim Stevenson and I have seen in actual labs. The calcitriol, the 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol, the supposed active form of vitamin A or vitamin D, neither Jim or I have ever seen anyone with that being low. We have never seen a person with an active vitamin D that is low between the two of us. We have seen people who take vitamin D supplements have a high calcitriol, which means they are basically calcifying where they stand. And they can still have low cholecalciferol, the normal 25 hydroxycholecalciferol, the normal storage vitamin D. You could have the one your doctor runs, you could have that vitamin D be low on a lab test, and yet your calcitriol is high, calcifying you where you stand. The active stuff is calcifying you where you stand. But what do the doctors do when they see your storage form is low? They keep giving you more. And then commonly, what is the person saying? I feel worse and worse and worse. And then hopefully they find me, and I say, stop taking the rat poison. And they do. And within a month, they feel so much better, especially if they do magnesium, topical magnesium. With magnesium, think of topical for raising your levels. Oral is mainly good at helping you poop. You can use both. Just remember that oral magnesium doesn't really help that much for 95% of people. Topical is where it's at. Okay. Oh, and if you have topical magnesium and you put it on before you go out in the sun or before you go on a tanning bed or use a spurty lamp or any of that stuff, you will make even more vitamin D. If that's a good thing. We question everything here. But if I want you to understand the things that we know are healthy: reducing vitamin A, increasing magnesium, fixing zinc levels, not taking vitamin D supplements. We fix vitamin D levels, whether or not this doesn't, our belief in vitamin D doesn't change what we do. See what I mean? So whether either side of the vitamin D argument that I just presented is correct, what we're doing is making people healthier, and it's fixing their vitamin D levels. So does the narrative that we're believing in matter? Not necessarily. We're fixing the problem. A lot of people out there want mechanisms. They want the mechanisms. We're forging a path in medicine and health that no one has before. You don't get mechanisms yet. Scientists get to come after this and look at the work that Grant Genereux did, that Anthony Mawson did, that I'm doing, and then they get to find the mechanisms. Science is done after the real world people do it. Science is built on anecdotes and testimonials and observations. Science comes later. Mechanisms come later. I have to find these bits and pieces of research to back up what we're doing, and they're not easy to find. God blessed me with an ability to get through the research really well and to throw out the garbage. So anyway, let me see. I'm just making sure there's no more, because I totally missed that super chat last time. So I'm trying to go slower through this now. Okay. 53 people here. That's awesome. So we got 53 people here. We only got 24 likes. So if we got 53 people here, hopefully we should have 53 likes. So if you want to do that, just click out of the chat, like the video, and then come right back in the chat. Okay. Sam asks, in what form should beans be bought? I've been buying boxed beans and they survive on the shelf. The ingredients contain beans, water, and salt. I'm not sure what. Okay, I have never used boxed beans. I don't know if you mean canned beans. But are we talking about if you're talking about in a Tetra Pak, like the kind of containers that, let's say, soy milk, rice milk, chicken broth, those containers, if you're talking about those have aluminum in the liner, and that aluminum shows up in the food. I don't care if people say there's another liner on top of the aluminum. I see the aluminum show up in hair tests, and when people stop using Tetra Paks, the aluminum goes down. So I don't care what companies say. I see it on hair tests. It's like when people eat fish and they're like, oh, I got this wild fish from this special part of the ocean. It's not supposed to have any mercury in it. And I see mercury on their hair test. And when they stop eating it, their mercury goes down. I don't care what industry says. I don't care. They are liars. They want to sell you stuff. It's like when I showed that New Zealand organ meats were full of toxic metals, and people are like, but it's New Zealand grass-fed. How could it be toxic? I'm like, I don't care. It is toxic. So don't eat it. But if it's beans, water, and salt, and it's not in an aluminum-lined container, that's fine. If it's in an aluminum-lined container, like Tetra Paks, you're putting aluminum in your system. How much poison does it take? Just enough. What dose is okay for you? I don't know. You'll find out when you get there. This is the danger of toxins. How much does it take? Just enough. When do I know when I'm toxic? Once you're toxic. That's how it works. People don't believe me about vitamin A toxicity until all of a sudden one day they go, oh crap, I think I'm vitamin A toxic. Maybe Paul Saladino will figure it out someday. But anyway, beans, water, and salt's fine. I don't care about the form of beans too much. Other than I care about the containers. Dry beans are nice. They work. I do think if people can cook beans from dried, where they soak them and then you cook them, and you cook them pretty hard, then you break down some more of the anti-nutrients in the beans, and then they're a bit healthier. I do think I like dried beans better. Canned beans, you got the can problem. One of the things you can do with canned beans is, or if we're talking about boxed beans in water, if you can rinse off, I don't eat the bean juice. I forget there's a name for that. But I don't eat that. In a canned bean, I don't eat the bean juice. Like if I cook beans from dry, the bean juice is amazing. But in a can, with whatever the can is lined with and the metal of the can, I'm not going to eat that bean juice. Because the beans were cooked in that inside the can. They heat it so they kill off, so it's shelf stable. I don't want that. So that's a big difference between the two. So Next question. In the Love Your Liver, it states specifically fructose generally, I'm going to emphasize that word, fructose generally slows down the ALDH detox pathway in your liver, and this is not good for your vitamin A detox process. And if this is the case, how come you don't consider the fructose in fruits bad, but when extracted, you do? I may not have been clear about this in the Love Your Liver program, but I've never been anti all fruit. There's a key thing to remember here about the approaches that we're doing is if you get stuck on reading everybody on the internet and everybody says this food's bad because of this and this food's bad because of this and this food's bad because of this and this food's bad because of this, you will run out of things to eat and you will starve to death. I can tell you that not eating is a perfect way to create health problems, the end product of which is death. So we would like to avoid that. Seems like a good idea, right? What I have said is that one of the ways they cause or create cholestasis, toxic bile leaking, in the literature is with high fructose diets. There's a key word there, high, and then in the quote you took from me, generally. When people paint things as black and white, you paint yourself into a corner quite quickly. Now, let me see. Hold on. So, bananas, let's say 25 grams of carbs. Okay, that's what I just looked up. So, 25 grams of carbs in a banana. Some of them are starch, some of them are sugar. And obviously, the more brown the banana is, the more sugary it is, the more formaldehyde it has. And versus the more yellow or greenish the banana, the more it's starchy, what they call the resistant starch, and less sugar. That's why it's less sweet. I generally advocate eating bananas closer to so if you had to choose between brown and green, optimal would be in the middle where it's real nice and yellow with no brown. But if you're having to choose, more towards the yellow, slightly green versus more towards the brown. So 25 grams of a banana, let's just say it was all sugar. Okay, 25 grams times 4 is what I eat in a day, 100 grams of sugar. Not all of it's fructose. Okay? Not all sugar is fructose, in fruit even. Anyway, eating, it's very much like fats. If we think of so what else can they use to cause cholestasis in animal studies? High fat diets. Where did we start going astray with human nutrition, particularly when we started purifying sugars out of foods and when we started purifying fats and oils out of foods? And then we could just have too much of either of those and cause liver problems. I'm going to say here that I would think anyone would be extremely hard-pressed to find disease in people who are eating a mixed diet who ate too much fruit and the fruit caused their problems, right? Because fruit's kind of self-limiting. You just don't want to eat that much of it, and it doesn't feel good after you eat too much of it. It's just, nobody's going to, a fruitarian, if somebody's eating just fruit, disaster. My buddy sent himself to the hospital with sepsis and the massive candida infection that almost killed him. He was eating like 20 to 30 pieces of fruit a day some days, like 20 oranges or 30 bananas, or like it was insanity. He knows this now. We're fixing him now from all of that. He almost died, basically being a fruitarian. What did it cause him? Well, that was just fruit. There was no protein. What's another way to cause cholestasis in the liver? A low protein diet. So if somebody was doing all fruit diet, plenty of fructose, low protein, because you're just eating fruit, do you see how that would cause liver problems? And then he almost killed himself, went to the hospital and everything. Sepsis. So what do we do on the program? Well, for those who are overtypes, tending towards overweight, which is like 95% of the people out there, the general rule on them is don't add fats and oils if you don't have to. You minimize added fats and oils. That removes the excess fat problem for the most part. Minimize or reduce or eliminate added sugars. That reduces the sugar problem to basically nothing. And we make sure they get enough protein. 50 grams of total protein minimum. Minimum. People don't seem to understand this word. When I say 50 grams of protein minimum, that means you're welcome to go above that. I encourage it. I didn't say everybody needs 50 grams of protein. I don't know why people will hear that and then say, Dr. Smith says you need 50 grams of protein a day, and that's it. I get 50 grams of protein in the morning. Okay, I'm not saying it's a low protein diet, so we don't want to go below 50. This should not be difficult, but people out there will misinterpret what I say and say it wrong and not get it. But a lot of you women out there, 50 grams of total protein in a day, I mean, that's pretty close to like half a pound of meat. If it was just meat that you were doing, it's a little less than half a pound of meat. If it was just, I didn't say meat protein, I said total protein. So you can count your beans, you can count your grains, you can count, I mean, hell, I remember when I looked up orange juice once. I'm not advocating orange juice, but 8 ounces of orange juice had like 2 or 3 grams of protein in it. It does. Go look it up. So what I'm saying is there's protein in a lot of things, like the whole vegan and vegetarian argument. They're like, there's protein in everything. There is. And it does count. I do think meat protein is really, really important. And if you're getting none of it, you're probably going to have zinc deficiencies. You're probably going to have some protein issues. You're probably going to have taurine deficiencies. You're going to have problems. I don't think a zero meat diet is great for very many people. There are extremely rare people who do well on a vegan diet. Very rare. When I identify those people, I tell them, okay, keep doing it. But I don't generally, vegan diets are disaster for 99.9% of people, in my opinion. So what do we do to minimize the 3 things that cause cholestasis, liver injury, toxic bile leakage in terms of diet? High fat diets, high fructose diets, low protein diets. So what do we do? Low protein. We make sure people get enough protein. Brilliant. High fat diets. Stop adding fats and oils to your foods. Easy. High fructose diets. Don't eat added sugars. The rest of it it's really hard to screw those things up once you've done those basics. I mean, do we really think that people are eating so much fruit that they're causing problems? I don't think so. Can people do keto diets really well without like weird fat sources that they're adding? Not really. And if you're eating fatty ribeyes, I mean, here's a tip. Marbling in meat, fat running through the muscle of a steak means that cow was sick AF. Humans shouldn't have fat running through their muscles. It's called intramuscular fat. It's a horrible sign of diseased bodies. So you shouldn't be eating diseased cattle who have fat streaks running through their muscles. Now, fat on the outside of the muscle, that's normal. I'm talking about marbling. If you don't know what marbling is, look it up. But the people eating marbled ribeyes, those are sick cows. Those are not healthy. You should not have fat running through a muscle. You ever see a deer, venison steak? There's no fat running through it from a wild deer. There's no fat running through it. Like the idea that fatty meat is a healthy thing at all, it's delusional. Healthy animals who exercise a lot and don't eat crap food should not have tons of fat in them. I'll tell the story again. I remember when as a kid, we would drive down to Mexico, go to the beach from Arizona, and when we drive by, you'd see the cattle on the side of the road. You could see their ribs. They were free range cattle, truly free range in the desert. You could see their ribs. Do you think they had much fat on those steaks? The keto and carnivore high-fat delusion is just bonkers. And then they'll be like, oh, we're going to eat nuts and avocados all day. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like a supernatural diet. Totally natural. You could just walk around in nature and just pick avocados off trees and shell nuts all day and eat fat running through steaks. No. High-fat diets are not natural for humans at all. Please don't bring up the Inuit. All hypothyroid and they don't live a long time. I wouldn't hold them up as your example. So, let's see. I didn't see if anybody else. Let me just flip through here. I'm not saying to eat no fat. So again, did I say anything about eating no fat or low fat or no fruit? I didn't say anything like that. I didn't say eat all muscle meat all the time. I didn't say any of those things. One of the key things that makes us different in this work is we are trying to help each individual person figure out what is the best for them. Anybody out there who says there is one optimal human diet is a liar, or they don't understand it, or they're part of controlled opposition. I may get dinged for using that term, but hey, the censoring's already coming. So, Reliable Andrew asks, hi, Dr. Smith, regarding the Terminator zapper, if you're aware of it, do you consider the copper electrodes to be an issue or just have a negligible effect? I don't think zapping the body with frequencies is a good idea in general. There is some theoretical pieces out there connecting like electrical muscle stimulation to Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't think our nervous system runs on electrical currents, like biochemical electrical currents. I don't think sending electricity from the outside through that is a good idea. And if you are sending through currents that can actually kill living things, you're sending through currents that can kill living things, I don't think that's a good idea. We deal with parasites differently in this program by helping the body to get healthier because parasites love dead, diseased, toxic tissue. That's what they feed on. We reduce that, and we've had lots of people lately saying that they see parasites in their stool as they're doing this detox program. Why would they see parasites in their stool all of a sudden? Because the parasites didn't have stuff to feed on anymore. So they start falling off. Imagine the logic here. If a bacteria could get into you and kill you due to sepsis, do we not believe that your own white blood cells could kill little parasites? Why can't your immune system infect parasites? If bacteria from outside can infect you, why don't we turn it around? So what if that can happen? Here's what I do know about most parasite things. especially herbs for parasite cleanses. If you look up all of them, they are all super toxic to the liver. Super toxic. Liver parasite medications, super toxic to the liver. So you want to rob Peter to pay Paul and take things that are toxic for your liver to supposedly get rid of parasites, which almost always seem to come back, don't they? Maybe because you didn't fix the cause, which is the toxic, necrotic, dying, sick tissue in your guts. Just a thought. And I've had I've had people come to me. They say, I think I have parasites. And we start doing the program and they start feeling better. And we didn't ever treat the parasites. We have the same thing with Lyme. I've had people come to me who have spent tens of thousands of dollars on Lyme literate doctors and IV antibiotics and all this stuff. And they either didn't get any better or they got sicker. And then they start doing the program. I don't treat Lyme. And they start doing better than they ever did when they were treating Lyme. We're just making the body healthier. Then the body does everything better, including fighting off parasites and Lyme. Okay. So the copper electrodes are kind of secondary importance to me. I mean, I don't think sticking copper on you. I was just talking to a buddy of mine last night at the basketball game, and he was talking about his uncle or something who wore a copper bracelet for like 2 years. And he said, this guy is just sick, so sick, just so sick. Copper's a poison. Copper causes cholestasis. This is in the literature. Copper is detoxed by your body through bile, which means that if you get cholestasis and leaky bile, you're putting copper right back into your bloodstream. What do I treat every day? Copper toxicity every day. If you think bioavailable copper is a thing, good luck to you. Come back when you figure out that it was a joke and a lie. So Monica asks, hi, Dr. Smith, I've stopped taking vitamin D for 2 months. Could this affect the length of the menstrual cycle? Always 28 and now 41 days, thanks to your work. We see menstrual, so I don't know what else you're doing. Context is very important. We do see people, when I'm working with people and we're talking, we do see menstrual cycles shift. And it will often go from a pendulum, you know, it'll kind of like swing back to where it was a little longer and then swing back to a little shorter and then swing is smaller. And then, you know, and it comes until it eventually settles in the middle. Right. So without knowing, you know, zinc status and so two of the things that can really affect hormones, we have magnesium and we have zinc. Generally reproductive system issues in men and women typically involve a zinc deficiency, and they typically involve copper toxicity and vitamin A toxicity. Right? How do birth control pills work? If you watch my video on this channel, birth control pills work by raising vitamin A and copper in your blood. How do they cause infertility in women with one mineral? Give them a copper wire, stick it up there. Infertile. Hey. And then the lunatics out there are like, there is no such thing as copper toxicity. Oh, just stick a copper wire in a woman's cervix and watch her go infertile. And then we get to detox all that copper that's been absorbed into those tissues for years afterwards. Sorry, signal got a little slow there. So, if you push detox too hard, your menstrual cycle could change. If you're missing certain nutrients, essential minerals, your cycle could shift. There's all sorts of things. I mean, here's not where I typically do individual treatments and diagnoses. I'm just going to give you some of the ideas. But the shifting of cycles, if you were seeing your cycle shift a little bit and overall you felt better and your cycle symptoms were improving, they were less negative, then I'd say I don't care about the length of the cycle shifting a little bit. All the signs are good. Your hormone cycle shifted a bit, but overall your symptoms are better and your menstrual symptoms are better. If that was what was going on, I'd say I'm not worried about this at all. We might still want to evaluate the zinc and the selenium, but that's what I do in my consults. So if you were not feeling better and symptoms were stronger, I'd say you're either pushing too hard, like dumping too much bile, leaking too much bile because you're pushing detox too hard, which is the most common thing I find in this whole program ever. People push too hard. Remember, it is the toxic bile that is stored in your liver that is the root cause of your disease. So it's already causing the symptoms. So our goal is not to make it worse. Our goal is to get rid of it at a pace that doesn't make you worse. This is the balance. People can take too much zinc, which causes them to dump too much copper too quickly, and then women can cause themselves menstrual symptoms. So this is all stuff that I take into account when, in my office hours, which is the follow-ups I do for my personal clientele. That's what we go over there. So I would be asking these questions. Are you doing better? How's the menstrual cycle symptoms doing? What are you taking? What are you eating? Are you having any other symptoms that are getting worse or better? I go through that. That's what I do. This is where we get into the fine tuning of the work. But here on YouTube, that's not what I do here on this show. So, but those are the things I take into consideration. And this is why people who are complex and complicated really appreciate that the office hours being included in the packages, where I'm not like all the other practitioners nickel and diming for follow-ups. You get 6 months of potential follow-ups in a package with me. So Monica asks, what are your thoughts on lion's mane? Also, can celiacs produce more bile to other non-glutinous cereal proteins? Thanks and have a lovely weekend. Lion's mane is a mushroom, a medicinal mushroom. I'm skeptical. I'm extremely skeptical long-term. If something is making your body do something, it's something your body didn't want to do itself or couldn't do itself. I don't generally eat fungus. So you can try it, hope for the best if you want, but I'm not joining you and I'm not putting it in the program. So yeah, it's not, they talk about the magical carbohydrate molecules in mushrooms and I'm going, well, they aren't essential. So what are they doing? They're having drug-like effects. Okay. Do we want that? Generally, no. I've been doing all this work without touching medicinal mushrooms at all. If that kind of shows you my stance on them. Okay. Can celiacs produce more bile to other non-glutinous cereal proteins? I don't know. But what she's referring to is celiacs have been shown in studies to dump more bile when they eat gluten. I want you to think about this. Why with a celiac, right? They have all this damage in their gut, to their gut lining. The villi are getting basically dissolved. What could be dissolving them? How could gluten cause damage in one person and not in another? It's the same molecule. We're all humans. It's the bile. Celiacs dump more bile when they eat gluten. The bile goes into your intestines and starts dissolving stuff. Hey, here's a weird thing. In a study on where they were trying to make a model of celiac in mice, they could not create the celiac disease model in mice until they added retinoic acid. Couldn't do it until they added retinoic acid. Wait. Retinoic acid is vitamin A. It is dumped in the bile. Retinoic acid, all trans retinoic acid, is used on people's faces as a chemical peel. One dermatologist in an article referred to it as causing a controlled wound to the skin, a controlled wound. So they're saying we can control how much damage, how much of your face skin we dissolve. Hey, the villi in celiac disease are dissolving. The other researchers were unable to create celiac disease model in mice without retinoic acid. They couldn't dissolve the villi of celiac disease without retinoic acid present, which is a chemical peel which dissolves cells. Why hasn't anybody figured this out before? I don't know. But hopefully you all see that connection. Now, here's the important thing, Monica. For any one person, anything that triggers too much bile dumping at once, anything, it could be stress, it could be lack of sleep, could be a certain supplement, even ones that we might use and that we think are good. Well, if somebody's dumping too much bile from that thing, that's going to cause more damage than good. So we're back to the same thing of constantly I'm sitting there telling people, you may think that's good, but if you're looking at your symptoms and you're coming here to ask me about why do I not feel good, slow down, take less. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And then the most important one, this is not a game. I have lots of people where I look at their tests and I say, you have a zinc deficiency. Okay. And I tell them the most zinc, that the ceiling of zinc that I think they could go up to. You could go up to X amount. I do not want you going over this amount, but you are to figure out what is the best dose for you up to that amount. And then 6 months later, we're going to reassess their zinc to see how that worked. So I don't want them getting symptoms from too much zinc, but I'm also giving them a limit. And we are going to figure this out together. What do I sometimes have people do? They come into troubleshooting office hours and they say, Doc, I don't feel good. I'm getting insomnia or anxiety or depression. And these things are coming up. And I go, how much zinc are you taking? And they say, however much, X milligrams. And I'm like, did you notice these problems coming up as you started increasing your dose of zinc? Yeah. Do you remember when I said if you get any negative symptoms, you're on too much zinc and you should back off? Yeah. Are you having symptoms right now? Yeah. What did I tell you to do? Back off. Why didn't you back off? Because I have a zinc deficiency on the labs, and you said I have a zinc deficiency and you told me to take zinc. And I said, did you miss all the other parts? Where I'm telling you to listen to your body and not take too much for you. Do you know that I've had a woman completely refill her zinc deficiency stores with 5 milligrams of zinc a day? That was all she took. Her next labs came back. They were amazing. And she said, I couldn't take any more than 5 milligrams. More than 5 milligrams made me feel bad. She listened to her body and me, and she needed very little zinc to fill it up. And I have other people who need 60 milligrams a day, rarely more. And I tell people, if you're going to go over 60 milligrams, you better be in touch with me, because zinc toxicity is an actual thing. And we don't want to go there. We want to refill you, but we don't want to go into toxicity. Sounds smart, right? So when people start playing with higher doses, I tell them, you keep in touch. Don't go rogue. And here's the signs that you might be on too much. And then what do? You back off when you see that. I give people tons of warnings. I give people more information and more warnings than just about anybody out there. So because we're trying to teach people how to listen to their body. Yes, we use the labs because we need a map. We need a map of, think of the labs as the map. Okay. It says you're here. Wait, we'll bring this on the screen. You're here, and we want you here. Like, right? You're here, you're deficient. We want you here, which is replete or filled up. Okay, now think of, let's just say Google Maps. You look up, you're going from here to here. It might say there's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different routes that you could take. It might say this one's a little slower. This is the fastest one. This one's slower. This one's this much slower. This one's this much slower. Okay, but there's different routes. So now think about this in terms of different people. I could have 10 people, 5 men, 5 women, with all the same labs. All their zinc and copper looks all the same. What are the doses of zinc that each of those people is going to need? There might be a person on there who can't take any zinc or they have negative reactions. They're all zinc deficient, but one person can't take it. Or they can eat red meat, but they can't take supplements. And then another person is like, wow, I feel amazing on 60 milligrams a day. After they went to that dose, based on my guidance that I give people in the videos that come with the consults. I call it the zinc experiment. Crazy name, right? And other people may be in between there. Quick example. Here's an example of somebody who didn't listen completely. They didn't internalize my instructions at the start. Woman goes up to 30 milligrams of zinc a day. She said, I was feeling better. It was helping. It was good. She goes up to 45 milligrams. I started getting a little insomnia, but I felt better overall. I felt better than on 30 overall, but I started getting some more insomnia. Trouble falling asleep initially, which is copper dumping or copper toxicity. She was dumping too much because she was on more zinc than her body wanted. What did she do? She went up to 60 milligrams. And she said, oh my gosh, I couldn't sleep. And I'm like, what would my instructions have told you to do? 60 is way too much. 45 is having some negatives. That's too much too. Go back to 30. This is how we do things. We don't do protocols. Protocols are for people without enough stuff up here. Just do this recipe. Like even those of you who are cooks and chefs, even just home chefs, you know that you tweak the recipes based on what you have, based on what you want to do with it, based on who's eating. You tweak the recipes. Protocols are for those who don't want to listen to context. Protocols are for the weak-minded. We're above that. We're nuanced. We are trying to help each person figure out what they need. And there are some things that nobody needs. Like 99% of the supplements out there are toxic poison to your liver, and they will cause you more, long-term, they will cause you more problems than they solve. Like rat poison vitamin D. There's one. So yeah. Okay, we're at 9:42. I got to get going. Got to go do my inner circle where hopefully we won't be I'll keep it copacetic so we don't get censored by Vimeo. Just remember, say no to Vimeo. Probably going to start using Odyssey instead. Now I just got to migrate everything. So much fun. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. Don't take L-arginine for your blood flow, folks, men especially. If you are using ED medications, you probably want to absolutely minimize the use of them. Take the smallest dose that you possibly can. I understand, because why am I saying this? I have a lot of people who come to me who are Accutane survivors. ED is a big problem with Accutane survivors. So men, I'm not saying you're doing anything. I'm not yanking away your ED meds. What I'm saying is only use it when you really need to. And if you can take less than a whole pill to get a useful effect, do so. If a quarter of a pill works, use a quarter of a pill. Why use the whole pill? Just because they made it that way? Don't do that. And then consider working with me or joining the Love Your Liver program so we can fix the root cause of your problem, which is a liver injury caused by the isotretinoin. So we can fix the ED for good. So this is how we do things, okay? I don't yank things away from people, especially things, that are as an important part of their life as that can be, okay? So, hope you all enjoyed it. Remember, nutritiondetective.com is my main website. If you want to go to the Love Your Liver program or get into the Madness of Modern Nutrition course, you go to members.nutritiondetective.com. I'm off to do my inner circle inside the network, and I will see you all next week. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye now.